Now that you've got your footage into Premiere, it's time to start editing. You put together your edit on this sequence here. So what we need to do is get these clips onto this sequence. When you double click your rushes, your raw clips, they'll appear in this top left hand box here. When you drag and drop them onto the timeline, they'll appear in this top right hand box. So this is your raw footage, and this is what the video that you're putting together is starting to look like. So your finished piece will be what you see in this top right hand window, and your raw files you see in the top left hand window. Now, as you've just seen, you can just drag and drop your clips onto the timeline like that, but that's going to take the whole clip, everything that you've recorded, and put it on your timeline. And most of the time you're just going to want to pick a selection, a smaller part of that clip to use. For example, if you filmed an interview like this one, you're not going to want to take all of the interview and use it in your video. You're probably just going to want a small part of what he says. So in order to select just one small section, you need to use ins and outs. Now, this is a basic principle of all editing. No matter what program you're using, it'll all revolve around ins and outs. So an in is the start of the section that you're choosing, and an out is the end of the section that you're choosing. So it's the start of a clip and the end of a clip. So there are a few ways of adding ins and outs. You would scroll through your raw footage, you would work out where you want your clip to start, and you can use this one, mark in, and then you would choose where you want your clip to stop and use this one, mark out. Now you can see that the shortcut for that is I on the keyboard for an in and O on the keyboard for an out. I would recommend using the keyboard shortcuts as it does speed things up, and it's how the majority of editing software works. So you could work like this in Final Cut, you can work like this in Avid as well. So if you can get used to using the keyboard shortcuts, I think that's a really good idea. Once you've put your in and your out, that's not set in stone, you can change them. You can move your cursor further up and set a different in. You can move your cursor further down and set a different out. But once you've chosen the section, it's this highlighted area that you'll be putting on your timeline. Now, when you drag that clip onto your timeline now, it's just taking the small section that you've chosen. But again, just dragging the clips from this section into this section isn't the most sophisticated way of working. Sometimes you want more control over where things appear. So I'm just going to show you this by zooming out for now. So this toolbar at the bottom, you can scroll through your sequence using it, or if you drag the edges of it in and out, you can zoom in and out of the sequence so that you can see more clearly what you're doing. So I'm going to zoom out there just by dragging the edge of that. In order to have more control than just dragging and dropping these clips, I'm going to use these buttons, the insert and the overwrite buttons. Wherever you put your cursor on the timeline is where the clip will appear when you insert or overwrite it. It will be the start of that clip. If I want to put my clip in between these two, I need to put my cursor on the join between them. Now, as you can see, it's quite hard to work out where that is if I want to slot it in exactly in the middle. So what you want to do is hold down the shift key, and as you drag your cursor along, you can see it snaps into that join in the middle. So that's a handy tool to use to work out exactly where the start or the end of a clip is. So once you've put your cursor right in the middle of there by holding down the shift key while you're dragging it, you can then insert. So again, the shortcut for this is a comma, and the shortcut for overwrite is a full stop, but I'll use these buttons so you can see what I'm doing for now. If we press insert, it's going to stick this clip in the middle of those two. So if I've got these shoe clips here and this building shot here, and I decide that in the middle of this I would like to put the interview clip, I would hold down that shift key so that I can find the middle of those two clips. You can see those little white triangles appear as I drag past it, and it snaps. It feels like it snaps into that join, so I know that I'm at the right point. And then I would get my interview clip and press the insert button. And you can see that that interview clip is now in the middle of the building shot and the shoe shot. Now the difference between this, I'm just going to undo that. The shortcut for undo is Command Z. So just Command Z, and I've got rid of what I've just done. I'm now going to show you the overwrite button. So what the overwrite button will do, if we leave the cursor where it is in the middle of those two clips, it will just cover up what's underneath. So you can see that now we've just got the shoe shot and the interview shot. The building shot has been covered up because it was under here. So that's the difference between insert and overwrite. If you insert something, it will literally stick it in the middle of the clips that you've already got. Or if I'll undo that again. If I put the cursor in the middle of the shoe clip and pressed insert, it would insert it into the center of that clip. So insert will slot something in between something, or split a clip like this shoe clip in order to put it in the middle, whereas overwrite will just cover up what's underneath. If you really do prefer just dragging these clips on, the automatic function is for these clips to overwrite. You can see this little blue arrow pointing down. So if I drop that there, it's just going to cover up what was underneath. You can see that the interview shot's gone. It's now the material shot instead. However, if I drag and drop this clip, but before I drop it, I hold down the Command key, you can see that that small blue arrow at the bottom is starting to turn to the right when I put down the Command key, and all these small white triangles appear. And when I drop that now, you can see instead of overwriting it, instead of covering up what was underneath, it slotted this material shot in the middle of those two. So that's insert and overwrite. Whether you use these buttons, whether you use the shortcuts, comma and full stop, or whether you just drag and drop to overwrite, or drag and drop with the Command key held down to insert. That's up to you, however you feel comfortable, as long as you get to grips with the difference between inserting and overwriting. One last thing that's worth mentioning is if you have an in and an out, and you decide you want to get rid of them, all you have to do is press Alt X on the keyboard and they'll go away and you can start again.